Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. This is Sherry Beaver, South Carolina Department of Education School Counselor and Career Specialist Liaison, and I am partnering today with some colleagues from the University of South Carolina. Dr. Dodie Limburg is going to lead the team and the presentation off. So at this point, we're going to turn over the presentation, and we're ready to get some great information on emotional behavioral disorder. Dr. Limburg, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dodie Limburg. I'm an associate professor at the University of South Carolina in the counselor education program. And I am excited to virtually be here with all of you today. Sherry, thank you so much for having us. Hopefully we can do this in person in the future. I'm going to let Dr. Guest and Esther McCartney introduce themselves, my co-presenters.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessie Guest. I help coordinate the play therapy certificate at the University of South Carolina, and I also am a licensed mental health counselor and registered play therapist in North Carolina.
Hi, and I'm Esther McCartney. I'm a third-year doctoral candidate at the University of South Carolina. I have my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I worked as a behavioral specialist for 2 years in a middle school and an elementary school, and as a crisis counselor for children and adolescents in a rural community of Virginia.
So today we're going to spend our time focusing on what emotional behavioral disorder is. We're going to just give you a little bit of background of that. And then really the importance of the relationship and when working with kids with EBD and how to establish that. And then we're hopefully going to give you some takeaways of what you can go and put into practice with your students, some play therapy interventions. So EBD is characterized by an inappropriate behavior and or an inability to develop or maintain interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. So you may have a student that comes to mind that you're like, oh, I know they definitely have EBD, but that might not be the case because the difference is that it needs to be exhibited over a long period of time and has a direct negative impact on their academic performance that can't be accounted by anything else. And normally at the middle school level, a student with EBD has been identified, but sometime during their elementary years. So they might come into your schools, or you currently have them that have this diagnosis, but could be common that it did go undiagnosed or not identified. And so this is something that could be occurring at the middle level also. So an estimated of 350,000 students receive services for EBD through an IP in public schools, and that's about 1% of the student population. However, it's actually estimated that 2 to 4% of the population meet the criteria, but then they don't go identified, and then so they're not receiving the services that could really help them. And so identifying, some of these indicators of EBD is really crucial to make sure the students are receiving the services that they deserve and that will most importantly help them.
So some common behaviors that are associated with EBD can come under one of two categories, either externalizing or internalizing behaviors. And we most commonly associate externalizing behaviors with EBD because they're really outward behaviors of aggression, conduct problems, delinquent behavior, hyperactivity, and oppositionality, whereas those internalizing behaviors are more internal. A lot of students that are EBD with internalizing behaviors will be described as apathetic or unmotivated. They have that social withdrawal, the anxiety, fear piece, a lot of negative self-talk. And so it is important to distinguish between these two and how they may look different, but can both come under EBD behaviors. A lot of children with EBD are identified in elementary school, but there are some kids who are kind of maybe right under that threshold of criteria in elementary school, and then they move into the middle school and they're unable to adapt to like all the transitions they now have to do in between classes, having multiple teachers instead of one teacher throughout the day. So sometimes we do see that there are students that may be then identified as EBD, and maybe it's EBD, maybe it's also adjustment disorder. So kind of looking at that is for a sixth grader, is this something that is an escalating situation that they need support and additional services, or do they need some temporary services to just help them to adjust to middle school life? And so that's where it's important to not only identify the behaviors, but continue to monitor them and adjust with students as necessary, especially that sixth grade level. The importance of positive relationships is the main focus I'm going to have with this presentation. I am a behavioral therapist, and behavioral therapy is what my main focus is in my intervention, but I'm a person-centered therapist first, because I believe without a positive relationship between the counselor and the student, or between the teacher and the student, that most behavioral interventions will fail. And it's important to recognize that 70 to 80% of students with disabilities only receive school-based services. They don't have a therapist that they see outside of school. Most of the support they receive is in the school. Students with EBD often need more support, but they're also going to often reject it as well. But the emotional support from a teacher is the greatest predictor of academic success and the development of social skills. So when I'm looking at developing a relationship with students, and I say this, that when I started working with the students, I would always make sure that everybody on the team for that student was aware, administration, teachers, the school counselor, the school social worker, that my first goal was to establish a relationship with the students that I worked with. And that I would do that over a 2-week period, also just doing observations in the classroom so that I really kind of understood what the triggers for the behavior, when the behaviors were occurring, but also just getting to know that student. Then also looking at maintaining and restoring the relationships as like the 3 things that whoever is working with a student, that you are able to look at that student peer relationships that they have, but also student teacher relationships, student administration relationship, that does the relationship need to be established? Does it need to be maintained, or does it need to be restored? So establishing the relationship is looking for ways to develop a relationship with student. In the 2 years that I worked in Virginia, I got really good at basketball because that seemed to be what all my clients wanted to play. And so when they earn rewards, I definitely always built those with them. I learned how to even make a 3-point shot every once in a while. So spending time with students, showing them you care. I've done this by setting up like teacher-student lunch dates, where they're able to sit and talk with the teacher over lunch, whether that be individual or a group setting. Having random acts of kindness, celebrating their achievements, and providing school-wide knowledge, catching them being good. So often they're caught doing what they're not supposed to do, that even if it's a very little thing, if you can catch them being good, celebrating that with them, celebrating that good choice that they make is really important. Ask questions, find out their interests. I also say that I know a little bit about a lot of things like Pokemon and different TV shows, just from conversations I've had with students, that I'm able to give a little bit of detail on something and contribute to the conversation to establish that relationship with them. But it's also important to maintain relationships with them. So once you've established it, how do you keep it going? So a 4-to-1 positive negative for corrections is a really good place to start. Empathizing with students when implementing a consequence, recognizing that it is hard for them to do, accept a consequence, but that it's necessary. Identify specific times to deliver praise, and also positive notes home, or positive words and compliments. So for me, I established a routine of calling parents on Thursdays because I knew Fridays were hectic for me. And so on Thursdays, I called the parents that I worked with, good or bad, and just gave them an update. And I really had parents who said, they would panic when they would see my number from the school come up, but then they would realize it was Thursday and they were just getting an update, and that would kind of relieve that stress of it. I also had a parent who, her daughter moved on to the high school, and because I was in a small community, I ran into her the next year and at the grocery store, and she said, I used to really hate that you called me every single week. And she said, now though, I miss it. I miss that she's at the high school and I don't know what's going on. I don't know if, unless I get a referral, I don't know if her behavior is escalating. I don't know if she's doing okay, because I only get a call if something really big has happened. And she's like, I didn't think I would miss it, but now I do. And it also set up a pattern with my students, that my students knew I was going to call, and they knew I was going to be honest with their parents, but that I also really did want to be able to say something positive about what was going on at school. So that was really helpful. But always taking the time to deliver praise when I could for my students. There were bad days, but there's always something positive to look forward for them. Sometimes the student-teacher relationship becomes strained. It needs to be reestablished, especially at the middle school level. That back talking can sometimes really get out of hand. And so really taking the time for that student, that teacher to be able to meet, ask for a do-over, taking responsibility for their actions. And that includes sometimes on the part of the teacher or even for you as a school counselor. I've had to apologize for students for maybe not accurately judging a situation or passing judgment too quickly instead of getting fully what happened in a situation and going to that student saying, sorry, I made a rash decision. I just saw what was going on and I made a quick judgment and I was wrong. And so that really models for them effective communication. It tells them that you care about them enough to come and say you're sorry, and really helps restore that relationship. But also, if the student was really at fault, forgiving the student and letting them know that like tomorrow's a new day. Today is over. We're going to start fresh, and not something that you hold against that student, that you really did forgive them. I think is an important piece of restoring relationships with middle school students because they are learning how to manage a lot of different peer relationships and even student-teacher relationships change in the middle school era. So there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be times they mess up. There will be times even we as adults mess up. So showing them and modeling them how you can restore a relationship is really important at this age level too. So some resources for teachers, because I know sometimes you guys have teachers coming to you and they're at their wit's end of what to do. So sometimes creating a routine checklist, like when their students come into their classroom and just switch period, what are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to get out? Can you have a list on the board that these are the steps they need to take as soon as they come in the room? Sometimes having visible boundaries help. I've used duct tape on the floor because I've had situations with middle schoolers, especially coming behind the desk and the teacher really didn't want them back there, or they're up out of their seat. And because sometimes that ADHD, it's really hard for students to stay seated for a long time. So can you put duct tape around their desk and like they have this area to stand and do their work if they would like to? Or is there a place in the classroom that they can go and stand and do their work? And create that visible boundary that they know this is where I can do this. This is where I'm supposed to be seated. I'm not supposed to go into this area of the classroom. Giving classroom jobs to develop responsibility. Now at the middle school level, at elementary level, you'll find kids always want to help. At the middle school level, they really may reject that. No, I don't want to do that or in something. So giving them the choice to have that classroom job, it is up to them. And so usually what I will say though is, you know, hey, would you like to help with this? And if they say no, okay, I'll go ask somebody else, you know, and go on to another student. And 9 times out of 10, the student will be, wait, I want to help. Because it has to be their choice and their decision to do it, not that they're being made to have a classroom job. So just that caveat of give them the option of accepting the job or not accepting the job, and be willing to give it to another student if they really don't want to take on that responsibility. Pay attention to seat assignments. Who is the student sitting next to? Are those problems? You may have to have assigned seats. I know some teachers let kids move around. Sometimes you need to move kids around. Because you notice the placement is not working. I find that kids with EBD do the best if they're in the front row, closest to the teacher. A lot of times they get put in the back of the class or to the side, and there's more distractions in those areas. Whereas if they have a direct line to the teacher and their vision, it minimizes those distractions. I like to use individualized affirmations that I only tell that student, not just like I believe in you or great job, but hey, I know that your strength is that you are a really loyal friend, or, you know, telling them that I know that they can overcome a test, but I really like try to be as specific as possible in the way that I affirm them, that they are loyal, that they are kind, that they did this great act, that I saw something specific to affirm. And then again, establishing those goals and rewards with the student. So asking a student, like, how could we keep you out of trouble at school? What would need to change for you to do better with school? And usually they can set up their own goals. And when they set up their own goals, you have more buy-in and that they'll be more achievable for them to complete. Establishing those rewards. So whether that be basketball or time within a teacher or time with their peers, how can you work in rewards that they will be motivated to achieve? A lot of times with middle schoolers as well, snacks are a great incentive reward that they want to work towards, but I will do a rotating reward thing with middle school students, because if it's something that's always available, sometimes they're less motivated to work towards that reward. Whereas if we have like a monthly reward sheet that they know this is only available for the month of February, these are the rewards that I chose, but they're only available for this month. They're more motivated to work towards those rewards. And then we develop new rewards for the month of March. So that also just kind of keeps them interested in working towards their goals and earning those rewards.
So kind of reviewing a little bit about, what Esther focused on. Her main focus was building the relationship. So really focusing on establishing and maintaining I can't think of the R at the second, Esther.
Or
Thank you. Yes. So we wonder often, how do we do that? So a lot of what I'll be talking about is utilizing creative arts to help establish rewards or establish a relationship with our students. Esther mentioned some individualized rewards and individualized affirmations. And in order to do that, you have to get to know the students that you're working with. So we'll start with a brief background on creative arts and why this could be helpful for middle school age students, as well as some creative arts strategies and interventions that U.S. school counselors can utilize in your schools with your students. So the quote here is one of my favorite quotes connected to play therapy and creative arts, and it says that you can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. So often with middle school aged students, we don't necessarily get to see them play necessarily like we do with younger students. However, we do get to see their creative spaces, especially if they're into writing or music or sports or drawing, and listening and being around them and in their environment. We really get to learn a lot about who they are as people. Again, play is innate, not just for children, but for adolescents too. They may not want to play because it's not seen as cool in their age, and they're really trying to fit in. But once you kind of break through some of those fears or insecurities, they really open up and really want to be creative and play. So although this slide is about child communication, we see a lot of the similar communication patterns in adolescence. So younger children are unable to reason, think, and judge the same as adults. Older adolescents are able to reason and think and judge better than children. However, their rationale, their reasoning, their thinking, their impulsivity is still not the same essentially as adults. So we have to look at them through a developmental lens, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So developmentally, they communicate their needs differently. They may communicate their needs through expression and action. Yes, adolescents have plenty of words to express how they're feeling. And if you have teenagers, you know that they express a lot of words probably about their feelings. But they also accompany that with some behaviors, and that's seen a lot in school. Like Esther mentioned, again, the externalized behaviors that we see in classes when they get frustrated or sad or anxious. That is a way of communicating a need through those behaviors. So always remembering that there's a function or a purpose behind a behavior. Remembering again that there are reasons why we do what we do as people, and we really have to think about what are these behaviors telling us. So as school counselors, we want to do our best at looking through the behavior and looking through it and not getting frustrated with behavior, but trying to figure out what are they trying to communicate through those behaviors. Behaviors can communicate feelings. They can communicate the adolescent's needs. They can be communicating attention, maybe illustrating some life circumstances or environmental factors. and they can be communicating fear and threat, as well as a child's perception of self. So if you think about, Esther mentioned really getting good at basketball. I played basketball with plenty of my clients and students, and one particular client reminds me, he came out, he chose to play basketball. He took one shot, missed it completely. He's clearly not very good at basketball, which is fine, but really missed it. Got very angry, kicked the ball, said basketball is stupid, and wanted to go in. So what's the difference between a child that takes one shot and misses and is completely over it and is angry versus a child that wants to continue to shoot because they think they might be able to get the next shot? It's that belief right there that I believe I might be able to get the next shot. So his communication there was not that basketball is stupid. He chose basketball because he enjoys and likes basketball. He was communicating his perception of self. That I'm not sure if I can make another basket, and I'm not willing to try because maybe my self-esteem is not necessarily where it needs to be. Also thinking about maybe a student in class, again, laying their head down on the desk. Maybe they are bored. Maybe they're communicating they're hungry. Maybe they're communicating they're tired. Just because they're teenagers doesn't always mean they're up on their phone or video games late. They may be up because maybe they don't have the safest place to live, or parents were fighting, or maybe they're home alone, they were scared. So they may be communicating some environmental factors. So when we work with our adolescents and really any students, we really need to take the time to get to know them. So our job is to find out what they're communicating instead of assuming that they're just trying to be disrespectful. I'm going to use another analogy that I've used with my classes before to help really send home this message. I think it's powerful. So if I want to paint the room that I'm sitting in red, I'm like, yep, red would be a great color for this room. I need the paint, the red paint. So I'm wondering, okay, yeah, I remember I have the red paint that I need out in the garage. So I go out in the garage, it's on the very top shelf. I'm jumping, I can't reach it. I'm reaching really, there's nothing for me to really climb on. I just can't get it. So my question would be, is what do I need? So again, you're not here to answer, which I wish you were. It's more fun that way. But hopefully you're answering at home thinking maybe a ladder, maybe you could climb on the shelves. Again, I can get a neighbor for help. Maybe if I had to tell her husband, that'd be helpful. Maybe I'll just go and buy some more paint. So those are all possible things that I could do to get the paint down. But unfortunately, that is not what I'm needing. So what I'm needing is the red paint. All of those options are considered solutions. So often as school counselors, we really want to help and we want to fix and we want to make the changes and help our clients or students. But oftentimes we're giving them so many solutions and they're just knocking them down. I don't want to try that. Oh, I tried it for one day, it's not working. And it's because we're not attending to what they're needing. We need to hear them first, validate their need, help identify their need, and then allow them to choose the solution that works best for them. Who really would care if I decided to climb the shelves to get the paint down or got a ladder? Ideally, we'd like the safer option, but for me, my need is still met. I'm still getting my needs met, which is the paint. So our job is to help identify the need and what our adolescents are communicating to us. And one way to do that is through creative arts. Taking a step back, I know, again, you've probably learned this in school, and I'm not, going to give you a whole lesson again on Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, but I copied part of this chart. It obviously continues until adulthood. But I think it's really important to take a look at this because this helps us understand our adolescents a little bit better. It helps us to build that relationship because now we have an increased understanding of where they are and what they're trying to accomplish during their stage. So if you look at the chart here, we have the stage, the basic conflict, important events, and the outcome. So really, if you look at school age, 6 to 11 years old. So we're looking at the later years there, and we're looking at early adolescence for middle school, really. So their basic conflict is industry versus inferiority. So this is really where self-esteem takes a big hit, ages 9 and 10 and 11. is when they start to realize and compare themselves to other people. They're also in a new school condition. So if you look at the outcome here, children need to cope with new social and academic demands. Success leads to a sense of competence where failure results in feelings of inferiority. And then the next stage, adolescence, identity and versus role confusion and social relationships. So they're trying to develop a sense of self and personal identity. And the relationships are the most important thing. So when we think about the students that are in our schools, and oftentimes when they're coming into your office, they may be speaking more about the drama in the classroom, or so-and-so did this, or friendships, and it may not be the most interesting thing for us to listen to all the time. However, that is exactly where they are. That is the most important thing in their world, is who am I and where do I fit among these people? And then how do I adjust to these new academic and social demands? How do I fit in this grand scheme of things? Taking a look at the chart, there's a few reasons why I want to show it. Sometimes it's helpful to know, hey, developmentally, this is exactly where this adolescent's supposed to be. So although they are talking a lot, maybe they're getting in trouble for this, that, and the other, or they're skipping school to go hang out with people, developmentally, their focus is on other people, on their social relationships, and building sense of self. Sometimes, thinking about students with EBD, depending on if they've had a life change or maybe even a traumatic event. So if you look at preschool ages 3 to 5, looking at exploration, we're looking at their outcomes, they're asserting control and power over their environment. Sometimes if an experience occurs during that phase of life, the child can get emotionally kind of stuck in that stage. So maybe that's why you're seeing an adolescent being more assertive, or trying to assert more control in areas that they shouldn't have controls, because they haven't really met that basic conflict yet. They're stuck there emotionally. Intellectually, chronologically, they're where they're supposed to be, but maybe emotionally that they're a little bit stuck in that area. Something to remember is that children, adolescents, and adults, we go back to the coping skill that best served us in the past. So if the last time that I got my needs met was from throwing a tantrum, so often you might see this with adolescents, if they can't go out with their friends, they may throw a big tantrum or throw things or break things. So parents say, okay, fine, just go, get out of the house. So they got their needs met. So they go back to the last coping skill that helped them get their needs met. Oftentimes that may be a little bit below age average if they weren't able to resolve it sufficiently at that time. So keeping that in your mind, thinking also about maybe some intellectual or developmental disorders, they may be in a number of phases here at the same time. So you're entering adolescence, so chronologically and physically, they may be teenagers. So they may be dealing with hormones, but intellectually and emotionally, they may be understanding at a younger age, maybe age 6, 7, or 8, maybe 9 or 10, when really they're 13, 14. So we have to keep in mind, based on these stages, kind of where helps us give us an idea of where they are, both developmentally, emotionally, intellectually, to help really have us focus our interventions and strategies to help them. So what does a client need from the counselor? Again, the counselor's role is to be different than any other adult or the child has contact with. So we're not their teachers, we're not their parents, we're not their coaches. We don't have expectations for them to disappoint us. We accept their behaviors, we accept who they are. We offer positive, unconditional positive regard, which is something different. We're not evaluative. This takes time, especially for an adolescent that maybe this is their first time really experiencing somebody like you in the school, or even just ever. They don't know. All their interactions with adults have maybe been evaluative or conditional. So yours is different. So Esther spends a few weeks developing rapport and relationships with her students before she really moves into the behavior mechanisms of change. It's there because she needs to show them that I am different than what you think I am, and I'm different than the adults that you've experienced in your life. It's our job to get on their level and use mediums of communication that's most natural for them. So again, using Erikson stages can be helpful and provide insight. Getting to know your adolescent and your student helps understand how they best interact. Some may be really artistic, some may be musical, some may be athletic, some may not want to talk and would rather write it on a piece of paper. Some have a lot of walls and barriers that you may have to work through first. So getting to know what those are by spending time with them and being persistent and letting them know that you're not going anywhere helps identify ways to communicate and work with them. Acceptance for that child, even in the moments of maladaptive behavior. So even when they're cussing out their teachers and they're coming to your office, or maybe cussing you out or being angry, again, accepting of the person and seeing through the behavior and understanding that they're expressing a lot of emotion, a lot of hurt, a lot of different things that they may be communicating through their behavior and not focusing on the behavior itself. Developing strong relationships of acceptance as they are. The relationship is the vehicle of change and growth. So, the whole model that Esther presented earlier is based on that change and growth of the relationship. And then our ability to stay calm, present, and understand that the intense expressions of communication are not personal. So they're not necessarily trying to hurt us. And if they are, it's not going to work, because our job is to stay calm and present and try to understand what they're trying to communicate through their behavior. So what is creative arts and why are we talking about it? So creative arts are also known as expressive arts, and they can be defined as the use of art, music, drama, dance, movement, poetry, creative writing, bibliotherapy, play, sand play. Anything can be really creative if you can kind of mold it to be. So why are we using it in counseling and in school counseling? Creative arts helps increase client sensitivity and awareness of themselves. So again, it puts this safe distance between them and what they're focusing on. It helps alleviate some of the vulnerability. It encourages them to invest in the therapeutic process. Sometimes it makes it fun, so they actually want to come and engage with you. It aids in client growth and development. It enhances feelings of safety in discussing difficult topics. It empowers clients to engage with their thoughts, behaviors, and feelings in a new way. So it's different than just having a conversation that they've had with so many other people. Why do you do the things that you do? I don't know. So if we engage them in a different way, we will get a different response. And artistic expression carries its own elements of healing also. We know that art can be healing, nature can be healing just in themselves. So combined with processing it and connecting it to the client can be even more powerful. So some takeaways for you all so you can take them back to your schools and back to your students. We're going to talk a little bit about some different creative arts activities and techniques that you can use. The first one, again, can be used for all ages. Middle school students may find it a little bit childish, but that doesn't mean they don't do it, and you get just as much information as you would for a younger child. So this is an assessment tool used to identify the child's perspective and feelings about his or her life, including school, home, and family. Often if I'm using this assessment tool, really in any of especially the drawing activities, I'm always doing it with the student because they feel maybe childish, even coloring in school, because they probably haven't done that in years. So I level the playing field and I do it with them. And they actually enjoy it more than they probably will tell you. So this is what it can look like when it's completed. This was actually done with a younger child instead of an adolescent, but I've used it with all ages. There's two gingerbread people here. One is how they feel with mom, and the next one is how they feel with dad. You select some emotions that you want to explore. You allow them to pick some emotions. You create a key identifying a color to go with the emotion. And then you ask them, please color in how much of that emotion you have with mom or with dad. So for this person, based on the colors, it looks like there's a lot of happy and safe with mom. And then with dad, there's a lot of scared and bored. And then after they color, you ask them, so what are some things that make you happy when you're with mom? And you take notes out to the side. And then you do the same thing with the colors that they've identified for both people. It gets them talking, and it's a safe way. Instead of just, barging in and saying, hey, you need to answer these questions, it gets them talking in a safe and a distant way. The next one I'm sure we've seen before is mandalas. So again, this can be used in lots of different ways. Typically, I just use it to keep them, their hands active, their minds kind of focused on the coloring while we do talk about certain things. There's lots of ways you can use it, but that's the primary way that I use them. I only use them, again, with students that like to color or have some art interest. Again, if your student doesn't like it, then this just feels like work to them. So you're not trying to get them to do things that they don't enjoy. You're trying to figure out, okay, hey, you like coloring, you like art, what if we did this? And you work on either all of it or part of it in a session together while you're talking possibly, or while you're just reflecting and giving them some positive feedback while they're engaging in the activity.
Yeah, I've actually used mandalas as a reward for a 7th grade student that I worked with, that we actually found a mandala poster that we Mod Podged to a foam board, and then we cut it into puzzle pieces, and she could earn a puzzle piece of the mandala. So one thing, it was cool to see her like earn all the pieces. That at the end of the year she had this big poster puzzle, but she would just work on a piece at a time, and it was something that she really enjoyed doing. We did have a lot of discussions as she colored in her different pieces, but she also really enjoyed earning another piece to her puzzle as well.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I want to start doing that. Great idea. So adolescents, if you think about any of them, especially later middle school into high school, they probably all have some type of earbuds into their ears, not just to, tune out mom, dad, or the world, but they are listening to music. So music is an automatic in when you're trying to understand and learn about your students. So there's lots of ways I've used music. There's gonna be a couple different ways I talk about on this one. The first one is building rapport. So oftentimes with my adolescents, that's the first thing we do, the very first session. I ask if they can share one of their favorite songs at the time. They usually don't want to. It might have some bad words in it or something. Again, I let it go. That's not what I'm here. I'm not here to judge the music. I want to learn about what they're listening to. Again, I also choose to share a song, again, something that's safe and it's not going to be overly revealing because it's not about me, but they like to see what I listen to, and it builds rapport. So you get to know them and you enter into their world. Another thing that I'll do is, it's a little bit, now it's starting to date myself again, but I used to say, when I was younger and I would be driving and I'd hear on the radio or my favorite CD or something, which they don't listen to anymore really, but if I'm on, driving in the car and I hear a song come on the radio and I'm like, oh man, like that song is my life. Like, how did they know? So we have often connections to music, and I'll say that and they say, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I say, great, play me that song. So they play me a song and it's something that they say represents their life and really depicts their life better than what they could have put into words. That song gives you so much information about the student, about their life, and then it gives you areas to process and ask, to fill in some of those blanks. Or you can have students identify a song that represents something in their past, present, and future. There was one student I was working with. She was in middle school and her father committed suicide, and she played a song. She played 2 songs. One was about the suicide of the Rascal Flatts song, and then another song she played at the end of therapy, and this was her idea. And it was about being a warrior and having gone through so much and how much stronger she feels at the end, even though she has scars and things like that. So you can use music to kind of track progress and process, past, present, and future. And again, if I ask the students to do something, I'm also doing it alongside with them in a safe way. I also use like music lyric analysis. I put it in quotes because you're really not analyzing it. So what I have here are clips of a song from a rapper that one of my students really, or one of my clients really like. So I started listening to him so I could really understand more about my client. and this song came on, and based on what I know about his past, I thought, wow, this song I think fits my client really well. So I asked him to please listen to it between sessions and to highlight sections of the song that he feels most connects with. He had a lot highlighted. I just picked out some pieces here. So these are some of the lyrics that he highlighted from the song. Yeah, sometimes I want to disappear, like I just don't exist. I know that you feel alone and no one loves you. Maybe you're gonna cover insecurities with lots of anger. Sometimes I feel like I've become what you were scared to be, which makes it really hard to look at you with sympathy because I'm feeling bad for you, then I have to feel bad for me, and that's just something I feel like we don't deserve. And that's why I'm looking down on you. I know it hurts. So essentially the song was the older version writing a letter to the younger version of himself. So we processed this again as he's highlighting and telling me I'm highlighting on my screen. So I did this virtually. And then I'm asking, okay, tell me more about that. And then he'll tell me why this feels, when did you feel like you didn't want to exist or you wanted to disappear? Well, it started last year. So I take notes. Again, I'm not processing it with him at the moment. It took the whole hour to kind of go through the whole song and have him fill in the blanks, but it gives us a lot of things that we can talk about essentially the next time I see him. So it was a really powerful thing with this client and other clients that I've used, especially with middle school, high school, that connect so strongly to music. And he was somebody that was very difficult and was sharing. He wanted to get better, and he did not want to talk when it came to therapy because he didn't want to go there. So that's just one thing that you can do with music also. So some other activities, box of secrets, that's just what I named it. But again, I had a client that would write anything, but she did not. If I didn't ask her the exact right question, then she wouldn't talk about anything, but she wanted to talk about all these things. But if I didn't know what to ask her, then we didn't talk about it. So it's impossible. So I had her write down everything that she wanted to talk about, one thing on each piece of paper, we put it in a box, and then every session I would draw one thing out of the box, and that's what we would talk about and process that week. Because I would have never guessed any of the things that she wanted to talk about. Phototherapy, students can either take their own photos if they're interested in that, or they can use clips from magazines to illustrate their life and what's going on and how they see their life and how they see others. Kinetic drawing, again, if they like to draw, you can have them draw themselves and a family member, or themselves and a friend, or themselves and a boyfriend, girlfriend, doing something, whether it's doing something together or just doing something in general, and then having them talk more about it, asking questions about them, and also asking questions about the other person in the photo. A quick draw activity, you give them about 20 seconds or so. You ask them different prompts. So in this 20 seconds, you set a timer, draw what impact you want to have on the world. Draw your best trait about yourself. Draw something you don't like about yourself. Draw you and your best friend, or draw what you want to be when you grow up, anything kind of like that. And then obviously you do it with you. And then they're supposed to be bad drawings. That's why you give them 20 seconds. So they're not super focused on making it perfect. You can only do so much in 20 seconds. Other music activities. So you can do mindful music listening. So reminding teenagers too that they are influenced by the emotions of the song. So if they're sad, they like to listen to sad music, but sad music also keeps you sad. So playing music and having them identify how they feel when these certain songs are on can help learn regulation, and it can also help them learn how music influences them. Allow them to play instruments for you. I've had students bring their guitar into a school to play for me in session. They've played songs that they've written. I've had that done multiple times. So if they like and they're good at instruments, I bring it into the counseling room. Nature and outdoors. So if you can't go outside, that can be helpful. You can do different things out there, card games and board games.
Yeah, and I was gonna add in thing, also concerning with middle schoolers with EBD is sometimes, like Jesse was saying, those psychosocial stages is even if they should be in that adolescent age, they may be emotionally at a younger stage. And so just from my experience, the middle school I worked with was actually a 4th through 8th grade middle school. And the administration wanted me to do an anger management group with my students because they all had anger issues. And so I had got, my coworker and I had gotten 2 curriculums, one for our 4th through 5th grade students, and then a middle school curriculum for our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. And we were really struggling with the middle school curriculum and our students comprehending the skills we were trying to teach. And it was actually, we were doing the 4th and 5th grade curriculum with our younger students, and we had something on the board. And when the middle school students came in, they asked about it and were interested in it. And we actually adapted the 4th and 5th grade curriculum for our middle school students. We knew if we just copied the worksheets and stuff, they would be like, oh, this is baby stuff, I'm not doing it. So we just retyped it without any of the characters. And it was much more on their level, that 4th, 5th grade level, anger management lessons than the middle school curriculum itself. So just bear in mind with that you may need to go a level down if you're using some kind of age developmental curriculum. But I use games a lot, and I would have sometimes parents say, like, my kid says they go to your office and they play games. And I'm like, I learn a lot from a game. I learn, can they follow rules? Do they, destroy the game or flip the game over if they're losing? Do they sabotage other players so that they have an advantage? I learn a lot about them through a game. I also find games, I have adapted a Jenga game to be a feelings Jenga, where underneath, when you pull the block, you look at the bottom of it, and it's got one of the 5 emotions from Inside Out. And then I would have 5 colored cards, and they flip a card. And sometimes kids who are really closed off, they wouldn't answer the question if I asked them directly, but because the game asked the question, they answer it. And they're willing to have that conversation because I'm not prying into their lives. It was just a random drawing of the card game. In a way we can talk about feelings and emotions. Also outdoors, I have found with my middle school students that I've worked with that they really do like bubbles. And one of the things I like using bubbles for is, one, if I ask a middle school student to practice deep breathing, they're most often going to tell me no. But they'll go outside and they'll blow bubbles, and we'll practice deep breathing. And what does it look like if they breathe a little bit differently and how the bubble comes out? The second thing I've had done with the groups is I have like one person in the middle, and I have the rest of the group blow bubbles at that person and see how many bubbles they can pop. And I have them consider them being their teacher and having all these students in their classroom blowing bubbles, blowing problems at the teacher, and how many can the teacher pop at one time, to kind of help them realize that maybe when their teacher isn't able to give them attention right at that moment. So there are just so many lessons that I've pulled just by using bubbles, from deep breathing to popping bubbles. We even had at one point that somebody was trying to pop a bubble, and it like popped in their eye, which he was fine. It was just a thing. And weird thing is that sometimes when you go after something that you should just leave alone, and then it ends up hurting you in a way you didn't expect, So there's just a lot of different ways to incorporate that. Even if it may seem like, oh, this is baby stuff, it may be really applicable to a middle school child.
Awesome. Thanks, Esther. And just quickly for the virtual and telehealth considerations, because that's kind of the space that we're in at the moment. Again, just limiting some sessions, so they're adolescents, so they can last a little bit longer than younger children, but I would say 30 to 45 minutes even still for middle school. Be ready to listen, because if you give them the space, they typically will talk. And that's what we want. We want to hear about their world. So try to do a combination of, again, letting them lead the discussion or activity at the beginning or the end. So you can say, we're going to do this activity first, and then the last 15 minutes, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, or vice versa. But giving them some choice and control. Utilizing any of the music and drawing activities are really easy to use virtually. Obviously, going outdoors is not going to be the same. I don't really suggest you bring your computers outside. That's not going to do anything. But I would just, again, try to be as creative. Don't be afraid to try something. If you think, hey, they really like music, I'm going to try this. Sometimes it works really well, and other times it doesn't. And you just say, okay, well, that didn't work. So don't be afraid to try things, as long as you're connecting it to what your clients and students like and enjoy and who they are, then it should probably connect in some way. So oftentimes, if you come with an idea, they will change it. They will take it to where they need it to go. So allow that to happen. So it might say, hey, let's play this one song. And in your head, you're going to process what the meaning of all these things are, but they take it a different way and it's just as powerful. So allow them, you start with the activity and allow them to kind of take it where they need it to go. And then other than that, just be patient and compassionate with yourself and them, because this virtual space, as much as they love virtual, they are still struggling without that person-to-person contact. So just know that you are providing a space and time for them to be themselves, and that is powerful in itself.
Okay, we know that we've given you a lot of information today, and hopefully at least one or two takeaways that you can take back to your schools and use with your students to help them. If you have any questions, please reach out. My email is dlimberg, L-I-M as in Mary, B as in boy, E-R-G, @sc.edu, and we'll be sure to share that also with a PowerPoint. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us. I can definitely connect you with Esther and Jesse. And, you know, we're happy to come to your districts or your schools. And hopefully next year we can do this in person and elaborate on this topic. That would be great. Sherry, we really, really appreciate you, you know, inviting us to do this, because we really want to help school counselors and then most importantly, students in the state of South Carolina. And here's some references and resources that we'll share with you. It's always good to have some things at your fingertips that you might need. And you'll be receiving or have already received a survey. So we really encourage you to fill that out to help us, you know, get better at this, but also what's more could be better for you in your districts and schools.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate Dodie and Jesse and Esther joining us today. I love those music activities, even high school counselors. If you got some colleagues to share those with, I'm sure those would be appropriate for our high school colleagues as well. So thank you all for all of that information, and just glad that you guys could join us today. This is Sherry Beaver with South Carolina Department of Education, and I appreciate you joining us today for this impactful and relevant information.